Welcome to Walk, Don't Run to the Doctor, where we are helping people avoid the burdens of preventable disease. By using evidence-based lifestyle tools to unlock each person's intrinsic healing ability, we're going to be supporting healthy families, healthy communities, and healthy individuals. Making your own food and moving every day vigorously can help you gain freedom from health debt. We can prove it. Welcome back to Walk, Don't Run to the Doctor. I'm here with Karen Zink from My Family Chef, and she had some sort of thoughts that would help you think about how this whole idea of food preparation should be approached. Karen, what were you thinking?
I would say to your listeners, you can absolutely do this. You can cook delicious whole food in your home and starting right away. You don't need any fancy equipment. You don't need to follow a rigid program. Meal prepping is simply preparing food ahead of a mealtime. And it can be a really effective strategy when you start cooking whole foods at home. So the very first step in meal prepping is really knowing your why. Is it to eat healthier? Is it to save time, save money, reduce stress around mealtime? Knowing your why is really going to help guide your choices, determine your priorities, and really help you stay motivated.
Excellent. Okay, so what do I need to start with?
So once you know your why, it's really time to plan. And the first step in planning is understanding the foods, which foods are going to help you achieve your goals, and which foods might work against you. So your listeners, they're already listening to your podcast, so they're way ahead of the curve. They're connected. So I would say, if you haven't listened from the beginning, go back and listen to this podcast.
May I put in a shameless plug for the book, Good Food, Great Medicine at this point?
Absolutely. That your book breaks it down. It's a good resource, and it teaches you how to think about food. Not every single food on the planet is listed, but it's a way to approach your food choices. Ask your doctor, trusted sources. Really understand which foods are going to serve you.
And then do you do like planning a week ahead of time for what you're going to feed your family, or how do you approach that?
So once you're clear on the foods that will help you achieve your goals, it's time to decide how many and which meals you're going to prep. So for most of us, when we're starting a new routine, it's best to start small and then grow from there. So you may want to choose, for my first meal prep, I'm just going to do breakfast or just dinners.
For example, being a guy, I'm never going to probably prep more than one meal ahead. Now, that meal might have a lot of leftovers if it's a casserole or a stew or something, but my wife and I are probably not going to plan multiple meals ahead. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. Some of our most successful patients have planned 21 meals every Sunday, and they have their entire week mapped out, and that works great too. But for me, I'm going to say, hey, let me see. Tomorrow morning, I'm going to have a couple of eggs and a fried tomato. So as long as there's a tomato on the counter, frying pan available, some olive oil, salt and pepper, and a couple of eggs, I'm good to go and a pot of tea. Then I'm ready to go. Now, other days I might be having whole grain cereal, so I'll have my whole oats, rye, barley mixture, what we call crockpot mixture, all ready to go. Stick that in the crockpot and have that cooking overnight, and then it's ready to go with a handful of walnuts and some blueberries and honey in the morning. When we're talking about meal prepping, it doesn't have to be hugely complicated. Absolutely.
Yeah, you have figured out your method for meal prepping, and we're all different, and that's what's great. It's not a one-size-fits-all. Sometimes we need a grab and go, or we'll be tempted by fast food or something less healthy. Or it's as simple as shopping and having things stocked in your fridge, ready to go. So I think it's really about planning ahead, identifying which foods you really want to eat that serve your goals, and carving out the time to shop and stock your fridge with them.
How would you address, some people are on the constant search for more and more kitchen appliances. And in our house, we argue that you don't need very much. Can you just go through, your top 3, 5, 6, appliances or tools that you use? Tools would be a better term.
I would say the very first thing is a good knife. When you're buying fresh whole food from the grocery store, you're probably going to have to chop a lot yourself. I use my knife every day, a colander to wash the fruits and vegetables, a good cutting board. I love my emulsion blender. Sauces, dressings taste so much better when you make them fresh at home. I love my Vitamix, and probably my new favorite is my air fryer. I do a lot in there now.
Do you do much with a crockpot?
Oh, I love my crockpot, especially for meal prep.
And to the listener, it's worth remembering that many of these are available at secondhand stores really cheap. So none of this involves much of an investment. I would suggest getting a decent knife. I almost always use Victorinox knives, which are a very inexpensive Swiss knife compared to other knives. But I completely agree with Karen. Have at least one good knife that you know how to keep sharp. For us, it's an 8-inch chef's knife. So tell me how you'd use your crockpot.
One of my favorite things to do in a crock pot is chicken breast with any kind of sauce, a lot of times onions, garlic. You set it on low and you get home from work and you have beautiful, easy to shred chicken ready to go in just about any meal.
And some leftovers.
Absolutely.
And you mentioned grab and go. One of my grab and go things would be a banana and a handful of nuts. Mm-hmm. And I think the point you made is really important. If you don't have a quick snack available that's already in your mind, in your environment, you're going to get something bad for you.
Yep, absolutely.
And what would be a favorite grab and go for you?
One of my favorites is fresh carrot sticks in the fridge. They're beautiful, easy to grab. Fruit is great. I have been making burritos ahead of time, breakfast burritos, shredded chicken. I have a great cheesy shredded chicken burrito recipe. It stays in the fridge for days and the freezer for months. So in summary, I would say know your why and prioritize accordingly, plan ahead, and really schedule your time, the time that you'll need. Plan, shop, prep, and really enjoy what you've created.
Yeah, this whole idea of having deep enjoyment in food and the time with others, when for those of us have the privilege of having others that we can share that food with, is often, I think, perhaps overlooked and might be the cause of a lot of anxiety and fear in our society, is just lacking that old-fashioned, calm enjoyment of food and freedom from fear. Perfect love casteth out fear.
I was just going to say, I love all the blue zones and all the, longevity studies. One of the things that they all have in common is enjoying a meal with others. Mm-hmm. And that's, in every society. It's pretty special.
We grew up with very little money. We were not well off at all. And my mother would always say, it's better to spend money on good food than on doctors. And as a physician, I still agree with that. So many of the whys we remind our patients of is, do they want to achieve a good weight? Do they want to avoid illness? Do they want to avoid a stroke? Do they want to get off some of the multiple medications they're on for blood pressure or cholesterol or for blood sugar? Aren't those good whys? And we get kind of excited about it, as you can tell. What are your whys, Karen?
I really want to personally live as well for as long as I possibly can. And I want the same for my family, for my husband, for my kids, for my extended family.
And I think it's worth realizing the example we are. You're raising your children to eat good food and learn to cook. You're giving them a gift that's equal to the best Ivy League education, probably better than the best Ivy League education, actually. Don't ignore the example you have for your family and friends. So, Karen, I bet you've got some quick tips for our listeners.
I would say sauces and dressings, when you make those at home, be sure to use a good base, a good healthy fat, so extra virgin olive oil, maybe an avocado. Store these separately so that everything remains fresh. And also other fresh ingredients, so salsa, fresh herbs, olives. Be sure to add those right before you enjoy the meal. I would also recommend you label everything, even if it's just the date. You'll be glad you did a couple days later. And also, if you're preparing a meal ahead of time, it's usually good for even 5 days in the refrigerator, but anything else you'll want to freeze. And a lot of times if I'm making multiple dinners ahead of time, I like to create one that I can freeze, that'll freeze well. Like for example, soups and casseroles, those tend to freeze better. So if something comes up, and life will, and you do need to end up freezing one so it doesn't go to waste, it's helpful to have one or two that you can freeze easily.
And that leads us also to having the right kind of containers. In our household, we pretty much have just two systems of containers. Some stainless steel containers and some glass containers, and they all use interchangeable lids. So we aren't looking around for lids, and half a dozen of each of those things in different sizes, and we're kind of good to go. Is that sort of the same thing you do?
Yes, that's perfect. I recommend glass because you can see through it, and it's easy to identify what's there. And it is worth the investment to get a good quality glass container that can go in the microwave, that has a good sealing lid so food will stay fresh. Absolutely.
For the person who's concerned about spending money on a good knife or these glass containers or a good pot, you don't have to have very many of these things. But if you spend the money on the best quality, it's going to be a lifetime investment. I mean, the pots I use were expensive 35 years ago, and they're still in use. They're still as good as ever. We have our glass containers. Now, some of the lids have broken down, but you can get more lids, and those are still good 5, 10, 15, 20 years later as well. I'm using knives that are 30 years old, and the only issue is learning how to sharpen them. So don't be afraid to spend money on good utensils. Just don't have too many of them. You don't need 15 knives. You may need one good chef's knife and one good bread knife at a minimum. Anything else is a bonus.
This is another area to kind of start small and expand. Don't go buy 100 different glass containers and 100 different sizes. After a time or two of meal prepping, you're going to realize how many and what sizes you need. So start small, start with a really basic set, and then add as needed. Also, you can reuse glass jars, and that is really helpful, especially for fresh chopped fruits and vegetables. You get all different sizes when you buy something, especially in the cold food section of the grocery store, in a glass jar. So definitely reuse those. And also, when you do prep your carrot sticks, your celery, your cucumbers, even wash the strawberries ahead of time, place them at eye level in your fridge for you and your family members. So when you open that fridge door, that's what you see. That's what it is at eye level. Brightly colored, delicious looking food that's ready to grab and go.
And that brings up the whole issue that we often struggle with in our patients is getting them to eat more fruits and vegetables. Even our health conscious patients, it seems to be a real struggle. And one of our standard rules is have a fruit or vegetable with every meal and snack, at least one. And so do you have any other, what you just suggested about organizing the refrigerator makes a ton of sense. Is there any other tricks you have for helping health-conscious patients who just aren't eating enough fruits and vegetables to have something with every meal and snack?
Absolutely. I think that's where planning ahead comes in. Shopping, washing, chopping, prepping in a glass container at eye level with a delicious homemade sauce. I love your hummus recipe. A good healthy dip to make it a little bit more enjoyable. In your soups, just add that extra vegetable, and just knowing, what is my vegetable with this meal? What is my fruit? Paired with a protein. And when you think ahead and shop ahead and have it at the ready, it's so much easier to grab and include with each meal.
So a lot of what you're saying really just involves being, the contemporary term is mindful, and just keeping it on top of your mind and caring enough to make it happen.
I think Google and YouTube are great resources, but don't be intimidated or led astray. You'll see 40 meals under $50 in 60 minutes. That's entertainment. That's not real life.
And don't think that because somebody else has a glamorous kitchen, you need a glamorous kitchen. Pretty much everything we're talking about, we could do out of a tent, as long as we had a power supply. Well, thank you, Karen. We've been talking to Karen Zink of My Family Chef, and we really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much.